I don't know where the phrase came from, but kind of restore the roar, restore the roar of Faurot Field. Hopefully it's a new trajectory of Tiger football. We've kind of been stuck there in that middle, and now obviously this year we're not.
My whole career was 5-5, 6-6, and right now we're at 8. But that's the thing too, we gotta keep going so we can finish better. It means a lot because it took a lot of adversity, a lot of different things, coaches, different things. So as long as we can just be 1-0 this week, and we'll really enjoy this moment.
And welcome back into the Tiger Kickoff Show, presented by the Columbia Missourian. I'm your host, Harrison Vapnek from KOMU Sports, joined by 66% of the Mizzou football beat writers, Wendell Shepard, Adam Ryerson. Brandon Haynes out sick today, so it's just us three rolling today. How are we doing?
Pretty good. We've had a couple of three-man shows recently.
Yeah, I mean, I left last Monday, no Brandon today, and I think both of you are going to be gone next week, so God forbid you guys go home for Thanksgiving. I can't believe you guys.
Yeah, how dare I spend time with my family?
Yeah.
Can't believe it.
Yep, we got the style points shades back on. We're fairly successful. These things, the one week that Missouri lost is when we didn't wear these, or that's one of the other weeks.
Yeah, the Georgia game, not everyone remembers.
But we all look good in the sunshades. And going from the sunshades to the Sunshine State, Missouri is ready to take on Florida this upcoming Saturday from Faurot Field. The Tigers fell to the Gators last year by a touchdown. But before we get into the matchup with the Gators on Tuesday night's college football playoff rankings, Missouri saw their highest number ever next to their name, the number 9 team in the country. With just 2 weeks to go in the regular season, the Tigers on track for a New Year's 6 bowl game. They have never gotten to that mark since the college football playoff era started in 2014. Wendell, were you surprised to see Missouri have the number 9 number next to them?
I wasn't super surprised given, what other teams are doing around them. I just think it's crazy that we're talking about a legitimate top 10 Mizzou football team. I mean, they've deserved it. They've beat some good teams, and they've looked really good, and one of the best teams in the SEC over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I think they got a lot of respect from the committee as an SEC team. They lost to LSU and Georgia, but picking up wins against Kansas State, who's still in the top 25, Tennessee last week by 29 points, able to jump both Penn State and Ole Miss, who are both 8-2 teams also, gaining the respect from some of their wins towards the bottom of the rankings. Adam, we mentioned Missouri on track for a New Year's 6 possible berth. Cotton Bowl maybe, Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl. I don't think they would reach the Orange Bowl because that's more of a Big Ten or an independent with Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame's going to get in. Yeah. Secret for you guys. What do you think, how have the expectations kind of changed going into these last 2 games? Is the approach different with now maybe a higher stake bowl game on the line?
I think that the stakes are kind of a little bit higher, like you said. The New Year's 6 Bowl, people like to say the bowls don't matter anymore, but for me personally, I think a New Year's 6 Bowl, it's historic. It's got meaning behind it. It always has. And another thing, there's 2 things that I really think it does for Mizzou. Nobody on this Missouri roster who has been at Missouri for their entire career, and some who have even been here for less than their entire career, have ever won a bowl game. These seniors came back. There's 27 that will be playing their last game at Faurot Field this weekend against Florida. They all came back for a reason. A lot of them, like D-Rob, Kris Abrams-Draine, they could have gone to the draft, but they wanted to come back and do something special, and now you have the chance to in the New Year's 6 Bowl. And with one of the lowest rated recruiting classes for the 2024 season, Missouri, a win in the New Year's 6 Bowl could really help Mizzou. And it could bring a lot of transfers, and it could catch the eye of a lot of recruits. So I think those 2 things really give them a reason to play for something.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. Missouri has not won a bowl game since January of 2015 when they beat Minnesota in the Citrus Bowl. We've talked a lot about the 2013 ties all season long. That team ended with a win in the Cotton Bowl against Oklahoma State. The Cotton Bowl wasn't a BCS bowl game back then, but now it's seen kind of as that New Year's 6. It feels going to be so fitting for the year that has had so many resemblances of 2013. Maybe play maybe a team like Texas, or maybe even Oklahoma State if they win the Big 12. I think that would be the craziest outcome if they play the Cowboys in that bowl game again.
That would be a really fun game. And I mean, like Adam said, bowl games, I think within the year, sometimes aren't viewed as, being very important. But you think about that 2013 team, 2018, those teams are remembered for having dominant wins in the bowl games, and that's how they're remembered. So I think this Mizzou team is definitely motivated to get a win.
Yeah, and I was talking to James Franklin, the former quarterback, before the game last Saturday. He said it was really an exclamation point on that season. They had accomplished so much. They were 11-2 to that point after the loss to Auburn in the SEC championship, that they wanted to have a really strong finish to what was a really strong year, and they won that game by a touchdown. Now moving from some potential games down the road to a potential game this Saturday against Florida. Florida's a good team. They're 5-5. They've had a really tough schedule. They lost week 1 at Utah. They just lost a tough game at LSU. They have beaten Tennessee, a common opponent between the two, but they're still fighting for their bowl game hopes, sitting at 5-5 into this game against the Tigers. We think Missouri is going to get Florida's best effort on Saturday, Wendell, because Florida's team still playing for a bowl. They have a big rivalry with Missouri. They want to prove something. They want to kind of end this, Missouri fairy tale run. What kind of matchups are we looking out for this game between the Gators and the Tigers?
I think, one of the things you're looking at here is, their quarterback, a very different quarterback situation than last year. We had Anthony Richardson. They can run the ball. That's a threat downfield. Graham Mertz isn't quite that same quarterback, and I think if you can put pressure on him, Mizzou's defensive line, pressuring Florida's, guys in the trenches, I think that Mizzou can, if they can keep him off schedule. He's a very efficient quarterback, doesn't really, put the ball in danger a lot, but if you can get him off schedule, make him uncomfortable in the pocket, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, Adam, what about Florida's wide receivers against Missouri's defensive backs? I think that Kris Abrams-Draine and Ennis Rakestraw are two of the best players on the roster. Florida's got a couple good receivers in Eugene Wilson III and Ricky Pearsall, who had a touchdown last year against the Tigers down in Gainesville. How can Missouri secondary hold up against those two good receivers?
Well, they've played some of the best receivers in the conference already. They got LSU. They did a good job against Kentucky, and even against Georgia. They did a pretty solid job locking down in the secondary. Now, there is always improvements. We saw last weekend Thornton had that insane catch on Kris Abrams-Draine. Got to give him his roses for that one, because that was one of the best catches we've at least seen in person at one of the games. But Kris Abrams-Draine had great coverage on it. Ennis Rakestraw has really been impactful in the secondary since he's gotten to what we consider to be fully healthy. And they've had a lot of help from JC, from Dalen Carnell, from those guys. We talked about it, I believe, on Monday, how those guys have stepped up, and they just need to continue to take those steps to be better as a whole unit if they want to be able to succeed against the Florida passing attack.
And we talked about how Missouri's now number 9 in the rankings, and they've gotten this big media national attention. Everyone wants to talk about how good Mizzou is. How do they keep up this momentum and not kind of fall into all the noise, but everyone telling them how good they are? How can they keep this going and, block all that stuff out and play like they did going into that Tennessee game, where they really played like they had something to prove, which has been the motto all season long?
And I think in their eyes, they still have something to prove. I mean, this team, like Adam said earlier, as far as the seniors go, they've never won a bowl game. These guys that have been at Mizzou their entire career, I think they still want to show that they can win, in a bowl game on a national stage. Now that they have that national attention, you want to keep it. You want to show, okay, this isn't a fluke. We didn't, get lucky against Tennessee. So I think that they're still going to be very motivated. I think if you play clean football and play the way you played against Tennessee, doing what you normally do, I think they're going to be just fine.
Adam, one issue for this team, I don't want to say consistently, but something that's come up here and there, is them playing down to the opponent. We saw that for 3 quarters against Memphis. We saw it for almost 4 quarters against Middle Tennessee, even against Vanderbilt a little bit. They struggled at times. LSU, the second half, another great example of that. Feels like they've been better with that lately against Kentucky coming back in the second half. South Carolina was their best start-to-finish game until Tennessee, where they really stepped up and had their best defensive game of the season at least, and then their best game on the ground. How do they not play down to their Florida Gator opponent on Saturday?
They have to play a complete game, and that's something that Drinkwitz has said he wants to see from his team. And I think it was about a month ago that he first talked about how they haven't had a complete game. That Tennessee game was a complete game. The special teams was much improved from Georgia. The offense was much improved from who thought it couldn't get much better. Then you see Cody Schrader explode onto the scene and just dominate on the ground. And the defense had the best showing that they have ever had for the 2023 season. They held Josh Heupel to the lowest amount of points that he's had since he became a head coach. If they're able to continue to do that and stack that momentum, they need to prove that they belong in this top 10. Now that they're in it, it's not over. A lot of people are still saying that they don't belong in that top 10. Oregon State should be ahead of them. Louisville should be ahead of them. Now they need to prove once again that they deserve to be at that number 9 seed.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how they can respond. Now, ESPN national TV night game, the whole country watching the top 10 Missouri Tigers. We'll see if they can feed that momentum going forward. Well, now to turn to what our writers are writing about this week in their pregame features and stories. Wendell, you are starting with the main man of Columbia, the mayor, giving the key to the city, everybody's favorite person in the world, Cody Schrader. Obviously, we've talked about his story a ton. The Division II transfer came to Missouri at the beginning of last year as a walk-on. Now has worked his way from backup running back to starting running back to leading rusher in the SEC. What about Cody Schrader kind of has surprised you most?
Wow, that's a good question.
It's my job asking the questions.
I think just his consistent toughness every single snap, every game. He's dealt with a pretty serious leg injury this season, and he hasn't looked like he's been hurt at all. He's just a really, really tough guy. I've heard, talking to players, coaches, talked to his father this week. He's just always super diligent in his recovery and his preparation. That's just who he is as a person, as a player, and he's always going to be ready to go out there and give it his best.
Adam, you were turning back to a game a couple years ago between the Tigers and the Gators. It was a 24-23 overtime victory for the Tigers. I think it was Daniel Parker who had the walk-off 2-point conversion in overtime after a Tyler Beatty rushing touchdown. These two programs kind of gone in different directions since that game. Florida fired Dan Mullen just hours after that game, eventually hired Billy Napier from the University of Louisiana. He's had a 500 start, I believe 11-12, including the bowl game last year for him in his tenure. How has Missouri kind of benefited from kind of some Florida regression over the past 2 years?
Well, there's been a lot of benefit. Tyron Hopper is the first example of that. After Dan Mullen was fired, Tyron Hopper decided to transfer to Mizzou. And that season, he was on the AP All-SEC second team, and this year he leads the Tigers in tackles. He's a captain on the defense. He is one of the reasons that their run defense has been so improved over the last few weeks. But they also got guys like Trevez Johnson, who transferred from Florida and also played under Dan Mullen before he was fired. But I think the one thing that is really impactful is that Florida's recruiting isn't what it was when Mullen was the head coach. So Mizzou has been able to go into that South Florida region and really start picking some guys that they want in the program in the future, and they're starting to build a little bit of a pipeline down there in the Sunshine State.
Do you know what Brandon's running about this week?
Brandon is doing a little bit of a look at the revenge tour that Mizzou's going on this year.
Okay, yeah. We got the Kentucky revenge game after the controversial call. We have the Tennessee revenge game staying on business.
Yep.
Kansas State revenge tour. Yeah, it's...
Yep. Florida's the next chance for them to do that. Last year, kind of a bizarre game, honestly, if you look back at it. So I think he does a little bit of digging into that game and the rest of those games, and he just kind of sees what you can do to get over the last hump of guys that you weren't able to take care of last year.
Yep, excited to read all of them in the Missourian on Friday. Before we do our game picks, we're going to bring back a game we played a little earlier this year, our Mad Libs, our Vap Libs, as our director Travis showing right down there. So yeah, you're able to time that right. Couple what-if scenarios going into the last couple games of the year. Both of you can answer on all of these. First one, the best case scenario for this weekend against Florida is blank.
I'll say a win as dominant or more dominant than Tennessee.
Okay.
I would say a win as dominant or more dominant than Tennessee. I think that's the perfect answer. Yeah.
I think that shows, it's not a fluke, and if teams ahead of you lose, you can maybe slide a spot or two.
All right. How about back to kind of bowl and rankings? The bowl game Missouri wants to be in, or is which blank? How about I make it a two-parter?
Okay.
The one they want to be in and the matchup that kind of fans or anyone you guys would want to see the most. Of realism. We'll talk about bowl matchups in a couple weeks. I think that'll be fun.
Personally, what I would want to see as somebody who's grown up a Texas fan, I'd probably be Mizzou, Texas in the Cotton Bowl. I'd be close to home, covering a team I've followed my whole life. That would be really cool.
Yeah. I'm going to go the Fiesta Bowl. That's the Arizona Bowl. I never been to Arizona before. Haven't gotten past Colorado when going west. So I think it would be really cool to go there. And for matchup, I would like to see a shootout between Mizzou and Oregon. I think that would be a really cool one. Either them or Washington, I think it would be fun to watch just to see those two duke it out.
What's that?
I think if you're Mizzou, you probably want to be in Atlanta just because that's kind of closer to home as far as
Texas too.
As far as recruiting goes, those are two areas where you can get some recruits to the game and see a good game.
I've already said mine. The one I think that won't happen. It's full on destiny. 11-2 Missouri, or 10-2 Missouri in the Cotton Bowl against Big 12 champion Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State wins their last 2 games. I think they play BYU and Houston their last 2 games. They win both those. They beat Wendell's Texas Longhorns in the Big 12 championship to knock them out of the College Football Playoff. And we see Missouri and Big 12 champion Oklahoma State, just like 2013 in the Cotton Bowl. Lastly, the worst thing that Missouri can do is blank.
I mean, lose. I think, you know, if you lose, you might lose a spot in a New Year's Six bowl, and that's just, you know, kind of a sour end to the season, I think.
Yeah.
Don't show up for the game at all. If we're gonna go losing, if you don't show up to the game at all, you don't got a chance to win the game. I mean, I don't know how it could get much. I don't know how it could get much worse, but I agree with Wendell again. I think it's got to be lose.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like getting into your own head about how good you are. It's like everyone's talking about how good Missouri is, and they come out and they lay an egg against Florida and lose 23-6, like they did. I think that was the exact score in 2019.
Yeah, they got a lot of recruits coming in too this weekend. So some that are already committed to other schools, and we could see some
flipness.
big, a little bit of flipness.
Happy holidays.
Yep, December 20th, I believe, is signing day. So rapidly approaching. Yep.
Let's do our game picks. Wendell, starting with you. Will we see an upset in Columbia on Saturday?
No, we will not. I have Mizzou. I'll take them by 2 scores, just like I did with Tennessee.
Okay, Adam?
Yeah, I'm going to go Mizzou. I think it's going to be a big one. I think it's going to be 48-20.
So that might be their season high in points. 48's a lot. I think Brandon is picking Missouri as well.
Yes,
I will make it 4-4. Gators are good enough to keep it close for a half. Missouri in the running game, especially by the mayor of Columbia, our very own Cody Schrader. 2 touchdowns in the second half. Missouri wins it 34-21. Travis put it up. 4-4. I'm on the verge of 11-1, which is better than Missouri's record. 11-1 might put me in the playoff discussion. I should play for a conference championship at least.
Yeah, it's kind of nice.
Terry versus himself.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not stuck with Brandon and Wendell anymore.
Yeah, Adam's going to get that,
pulling away
that
a little
silver
bit.
medal, second
pulling
place.
Away a little bit.
Congratulations.
We'll see what happens to you, though. We'll see. Don't start looking ahead.
Just can't get upset.
Don't start
One week at a
looking
time.
ahead.
I still have something to prove. You guys are talking a lot of trash during the week. I have something to prove. 11-1. Only loss would be a weird Kentucky game, but that's, you know, no one remembers that. It's whatever. We'll now wrap up our show. We will be back here next Monday for our little Thanksgiving special. Also preview Arkansas later this week. We'll have a couple guys on Zoom, a couple of us here in person. We'll make it work as always. This has been the Tiger Kickoff Show. I'm Harrison Vapnek. We'll see you next time.